So we're making bread, a basic bread dough, and the way in which we're going to cook it, in a big tin so it's nice and flat, we're going to push loads of flavours into it. We're going to make it into a focaccia. So first things first, because it's baking, it's more like a science. You have to be really accurate with it, because not like a recipe where you can add a bit more of this and a bit more of this. You've got to be absolutely spot on or it's not going to work as we want it to. So the first thing is, it's all about measuring. So flour, the main ingredient, we want 1 kilogram of this, 1 kilo. And then just keep your bag to one side because we're going to be dipping in and out of that flour to help us. So these can come out of the way because we've finished weighing now. And then we're going to make our dough on the surface. So make sure you've got a really nice clean surface because it'll pick up any bits of stuff that's on your counter and you don't want that in your bread. And then we're going to make a big pile of flour. Try and get it nice and high. And then they can go. So in the middle of this, make a well. So put your hand in and just push the flour to the sides, and then you make like a volcano, like a hole in the middle. And this is what's going to hold all of our other ingredients. Got that? So then we've got our water here. We've already measured it out and we've got 625 millilitres, which is just over a pint. That's the right quantity and it needs to be the right temperature, and that's because we're using yeast. And yeast is a living ingredient, so when we put water with it, it's going to come back to life and start acting and start creating oxygen and air and bubbles, and that's what makes your bread rise.
Okay.
So that we don't kill it off, your water can't be too hot, and because we don't want to send it to sleep, it can't be too cold, so it's got to be lukewarm or sort of like room temperature. And the way that I tell it is, if you've got your water, if you can put your finger in and you can't tell the difference in temperature, i.e. it doesn't feel cold or it doesn't feel warm, then it's the same temperature as your hand, which means it's perfect temperature for yeast.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Good.
Okay. So half of this can go into your well. That's about half. It doesn't have to be absolutely exact until it looks sort of full. And then into that, yeast, and it's 3 sachets, and there's 7 grams each.
Mm-hmm.
So to that mixture, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar. Swap that in. It's going to add just a bit of sweetness to your bread, but I like to think that it gets your yeast all excited and on a sugar high, so it makes your bread a bit better. And then 1 tablespoon of sea salt. Okay, and then you start mixing it in. So mix your ingredients in the middle, and then around the edge of your well, keep catching the flour and getting that to join in the party as well. And then bit by bit, they'll all start mixing together. And you want to do that till it's like porridge, I guess. Mix it quickly, and then it'll thicken up and won't burst through the banks. So that's like porridge now. Gloopy, horrible porridge, but still porridgey. So then I'm ready to add a bit more of my water now. And if your sides ever get a bit low like this, and it looks like it's going to burst, just push them up a bit, or pinch a bit of flour from somewhere else and build up your wall again. Can you see these bubbles?
Yeah.
This is your yeast starting to work. It's waking up. I've mixed most of mine in now. So now I'm just making sure no ingredients get away, because that will change the consistency of the bread. Scooping it all up and mixing it all together. Okay, so it's starting to come together a bit more. So make sure you keep flouring your board. Not too much, because you don't want to add too much flour to your mixture because it'll dry it out. But also you don't want it to stick. And keep a bit of flour on your hands too. And then that's it. If you push it out so it's long, that's it, and then you turn it this way. If you grab it from the back and push it into itself, so grab, pull and push, grab, pull, push, you end up with another long one that you push out, flip it round, and do it again. And this is kneading. Now this gets the flour doing what it should be doing. So it gets it all nice and elasticated and works the gluten in the flour, which is what gives your bread its texture. And the more you knead it and the rougher you are, the better the bread. And if it soaks up all your flour like this, then just keep adding little sprinkles. So can you see that already it looks a lot smoother and it feels different, doesn't it? It feels a bit springier, a bit more elasticated.
Yeah.
And actually it does get a bit puffier, because by folding that over there, we're trapping air into it. And you should do this for about 5 minutes. How smooth is yours looking? So look, you see how the skin of yours is still quite dimpled?
Yeah.
When we keep kneading, that's going to go.
Okay.
And you really can be as rough as you want. So when you think it's sort of nearly there texture-wise, start sort of persuading it that it wants to be a ball, because then it's going to fit in your bowl nicely. Yeah, lovely. So pat it into a round. We've got no big air holes on the surface. It's quite nice and smooth. And you've been kneading it for about 5 minutes so that it gets springier. So if you push your thumb in, it should bounce back. Brilliant. So now it goes into a bowl, and you want to put flour in your bowl so it doesn't stick. So the same way that you put it on the surface of that you're kneading on, just sprinkle some in. In there, and then I've just ran these under the tap and rinsed them out so that they're damp. Okay. This will keep the moisture level in the bowl nice and high so that your dough doesn't dry out while it's proving. And proving means that it's just the yeast growing, and it's growing in size, and we want it to double. So hopefully it'll be just about touching that by the time we want it, and that's going to be about an hour. Okay. So that's going to stay somewhere warm. So we didn't have to wait an hour to show what it looked like. This one's been going for an hour, and you can see that it's twice the size. So that's full of air created by the yeast. Yeah, you can see all the bubbles where the dough's stretching, and this is, you know, perfect. Full of lovely springy bubbles. So what we do now is we want to knock all that air out, and we want to knead it again quickly before we put it into the tin that we're going to bake it in. Okay. So we do a thing called knocking it back, which basically just involves punching it. So if you can punch it for me, don't be shy and really go for it. Perfect. Yeah, all right, just once. And then we're going to knead it again. So if you flour the surface so that it doesn't stick. That's it. And then just knead it again like you did before. Just to get the texture going again, to get the gluten working in the flour, and to get it back so we can shape it to the in the right shape that we want to bake it into bread, which is going to be in the tin. So we don't have to do it for as long this time, just to get it back to a similar texture that it was before it proved. We don't want, see that big tear, this big tear in it there? We want to get rid of that. So this is big air bubbles at the moment. You want to like compound it all so we've got nice little bubbles again. Well, that looks pretty good. Does it feel smooth?
Yeah.
And springy?
Yeah.
So it can go in its tin. So we're going to cook it in this. And this is going to need oiling just a little bit so it doesn't stick. So if you put a splosh of oil in, olive oil, yep, and then just move it around the tin with your hands, across the bottom and up the sides. Great, so that's all ready. And then we're going to roll this out to the right sort of size for the tin. So you need a rolling pin, a bit more flour, and because it's so springy, because you've kneaded it so well, you're going to have to be quite tough with it and show it who's boss to get it to the right size. Brilliant. Now go into the middle and go that way. You're not rolling it back, rolling it back on itself. Sit and check we're not sticking. Yep, brilliant. So that can go into your tin now. That's it. Down at the sides. So this is going to sit in that tin for another hour, and it's going to double in size like it did before. And we want to push lots of flavours in there. So we're going to do it now, because if we do it later, it'll be full of air like a balloon, and then if we start poking our fingers into it, it'll push all of the air out and it'll deflate.
Okay.
So we're going to put our flavours in. So we're going to go with garlic and rosemary. So pull the cloves off the bulb, and so that it roasts beautifully and all the flavour seeps out, we're going to squash them. So this is one of your knife skills. You take a clove, you put it on its flat side so it doesn't roll around. Have the blunt bit of the knife facing you, and then with the palm of your hand and your fingers absolutely out of the way, you squash it. And that's it. So can you carry on with those for me? Great. So that looks like an absolute load of garlic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But because it's going to roast in the oven, we're going to put it with lovely rosemary and olive oil. It's going to roast in the oven and it's going to become much more mellow and a lot sweeter, so it's going to be delicious. So rosemary. And we don't want the woody stalks in the middle. We just want the nice flavoursome leaves. So we just hold it at one end and then run your fingers down the stalk and push the leaves off. Lovely. So because this is naturally quite delicate. If that just sits on top of the bread
Yeah.
and bakes in the oven, it's going to burn and go too crispy. So we're going to make sure it's looked after in the oven, and we're going to put some oil on. So if you just put a splosh on, lovely, and some bit of salt and pepper. That's it. Now mix it all up and scrunch it. That's going to get all the tasty oils out of the rosemary. Same with the garlic too. And there'll be loads of lovely flavours on your fingers now, and we're going to push holes into the dough for all that flavour to sit in. So yeah, so you push them in and push your fingers right to the bottom and stretch and scrunch. That's it. Great, now on with the flavour, and you can push that in as well, push and scrunch. That's it. And a drizzle of olive oil, because that's going to keep it all nice and juicy. To make sure it doesn't all splodge out the bottle, just put your thumb over the top so you can control the flow, and just do a nice little drizzle all the way over. That's it, lovely. Brilliant, so you've scrunched all of those flavours in there, and this is going to do what the dough did before, so it's going to prove again and double in size. So we'll cover it with a tea towel and we'll keep it somewhere warm. And then this is what it'll look like after an hour. So because we just put a little bit of salt and pepper with the garlic and the rosemary when you were scrunching it, you can put a little bit more on just before it goes into the oven. Beautiful. So that's all oven ready now. So that's going to go into a preheated oven at 220 for about 20-25 minutes, and it's going to be all lovely and golden and have a really nice, lovely, crunchy surface. And the way that you can test for it is to tap it, and we've got one in the oven. So I'll show you what I mean. So when it's baked, after 25 minutes, it looks like this. And you can tell it's cooked because you can tap it and it sounds hollow. You let that cool down just a bit, maybe for like 10 minutes. And then you can tip it out. This is another good way to tell if it's cooked. You can tap it. And that's it. It's ready to eat. So if we've done it properly, it should be nice, bubbly, soft, textured bread.
So easy.
Gorgeous.